other important topic that we are going to take is extreme poverty in India. Okay. First of all, why it is in news? Because there were two reports. The first one by IMF and the second one by the World Bank. Both IMF and the World Bank are what? IMF and World Bank are Bretton Woods twin institutions. Okay? They were formed in 1944 after the Bretton Woods conference in, of course, 1944. So this is from the World Bank. Extreme poverty in India has declined by 12 percentage points between 2011 and 2019. World Bank ने ऐसे कहा कि extreme poverty has declined in India by 12 percentage points का fall हुआ है. Whereas IMF says that India has completely eradicated what? Extreme poverty via प्रधानमंत्री ग्राम कल्याण योजना. ठीक है, तो PMGKY के थ्रू IMF ने ये कहा है कि extreme poverty has been completely eradicated, whereas World Bank says the extreme poverty has been reduced by 12 percentage points. Now, what are the observations? The World Bank's latest policy paper, actually IMF paper was published earlier than the World Bank. ठीक है, लेकिन World Bank's is the latest one, so we will be dealing with that prior to the IMF one. Okay. The extreme poverty count fell nearly 12 percentage points to 10 point. Very important point is that the extreme poverty has fallen by 12 percentage points to 10.2. Earlier it was 22.2%. In 2019 it was 22.2%. Despite the effect of COVID, we have been able to reduce our extreme poverty. Okay? The decline in rural areas was higher than decline in urban areas. Okay? Almost double. Notably, the World Bank defines living in extreme poverty as if the living on less than $1.9 or less in purchasing poverty terms. Okay? In PPP terms, purchasing power parity means if this is a country India and this is a country US. ठीक है, तो $1.9 का मतलब हुआ कि 145 rupees, for example, कि $1.9 में यूएस में जितना सामान खरीद सकते हैं उतना सामान इंडिया में कितने रुपए में खरीद सकते हैं. डॉलर की जो वो वैल्यू यूएस इंडिया में रुपीस के बराबर होगी, दैट इज कॉल्ड परचेजिंग पावर पैरिटी. तो इट इज अराउंड 145 रुपीस. ठीक है, ओके, अंडरस्टूड. तो दैट इज $1.9 और लेस अगर किसी का इनकम है तो दैट पर्सन विल बी कॉल्ड टू बी लिविंग इन अंडर एक्सट्रीम पॉवर्टी. Okay. Now about the IMF report. The pandemic shock is largely a temporary income shock. By using temporary fiscal policies like fiscal expanding, expanding food distribution, a large part of shock was absorbed. That means the IMF paper has been praising India for the kind of efforts that it took during the COVID. Consumption inequality with their incorporation of food transfer has dropped to lowest level equal to that observed in 1993-94. Consumption inequality. Why are we talking about consumption inequality? Because the poverty in India is measured in terms of consumption expenditure. Okay, if rich are expending a lot and poor are expending not that much, so consumption inequality will increase, and that will be a reference, or that will refer to the increased difference between the rich and the poor. So that is also been reducing, not only extreme poverty, but also the consumption, the inequality in consumption and expenditure, that is also reducing. Consumption growth was found to be higher in 2014 to 2019 as to the previous decade. 2004 से जो 2011 में growth of consumption हुआ. Now consumption की बात हम करी क्यों है? क्योंकि first of all, the poverty in India is measured in the terms of consumption expenditure. Okay, so consumption expenditure has been rising, that means the poverty has been falling, of course. Extreme poverty has been completely eradicated. Whereas World Bank says that it is around 10.2%, IMF paper says that it has already been eradicated. Okay. Right. IMF report, extreme poverty has remained around 0.8%, almost completely eradicated in both 2019 and 2020. ठीक है? Of course 0.86% and 0.76%. Without considering food subsidies, poverty remains 2.5%. Without considering food subsidies, the poverty remains 2.5%. Actually, what happened was during COVID time, like the free discharge of like the provision for free food to the poor people under PMGKY, it has helped a lot in absorbing the cushion of the loss of jobs. ठीक है? If that cushion was not provided, more number of people would have been pushed into extreme poverty, and a lot of people would have died of starvation and hunger. Okay, so if we remove that food subsidy, तो still the extreme number of extreme people who are under extreme poverty are around 2.5%. मतलब अगर हमने फूड सब्सिडीज को कंसिडर कर लिया है तो अराउंड, अगर इसका मतलब ये हुआ कि इफ गवर्नमेंट कंटिन्यूज टू प्रोवाइड दीज फूड सब्सिडीज, तो एक्सट्रीम पॉवर्टी विल नॉट बी अ रीजन ऑफ एनी, लाइक एक्सट्रीम पॉवर्टी विल नॉट बी प्रेजेंट. ठीक है? अब ऐसा हम क्यों कह रहे हैं? क्योंकि एक्सट्रीम पॉवर्टी वो सिचुएशन है जहां पे अ पर्सन इज नॉट एबल टू इवन सस्टेन हिज फूड फॉर अ डे. ओके, दैट इज अ सिचुएशन वेयर विच वी कॉल एक्सट्रीम पॉवर्टी. ठीक है? बट since government is providing food subsidies, free food and free ration, so that gets covered. Okay, so that means poor people are there, but extremely poor people who will die of hunger, they are not. They have been almost eradicated. Now food subsidies had reduced poverty on a consistent basis since the enactment of, okay, enactment of NFSA 2013. National Food Security Act, ठीक है? It makes a provision for providing free food to people or very cheap food around like ration. All the people who are having ration cards, they are entitled, and BPL category people are definitely Antyodaya Yojana and all. So since the implementation of NFSA Act, extreme poverty has consistently been reducing. ठीक है? IMF paper counters the Pew Research paper, which claimed that 75 million Indians were pushed into poverty into 2021 due to Corona. ठीक है? But it says that NFSA Act, National Food Security Act, has actually countered, has actually stopped these people from getting pushed into extreme poverty. Okay. Now, World Bank की definition क्या है? People who are not able to, people who do not have $1.9 per day, they are extremely poor. ठीक है? Poverty estimation in India based on two levels. The first one is expenditure and the second one is income. ठीक है? So since the most of the people in India are employed in informal sectors, so making an estimation of their income levels is a tough job. That is why the expenditure or consumption expenditure is a better method कि आप spend कितना करते हो, आप expend कितना करते हो, right? Earlier, Planning Commission was tasked with the estimation of the task of estimation of poverty was earlier with Planning Commission. Now it is with Niti Aayog. ठीक है? In India, the estimation is done on the basis of expenditures rather than income. ठीक है? Because due to large section of people are employed in informal sector, जिनका income level determine करना मुश्किल है. But National Sample Survey, which is under MOSPI, Ministry of Statistics and Plan Implementation, it conducts an NSS National Sample Survey through which it measures expenditure, consumption expenditure of a sample of households. अब उस data का use करके we produce poverty figures. Okay. Various committees on poverty estimation. This is very important. Basically, Lakdawala committee, Tendulkar committee, and this Alak committee, these are very important. Also Rangarajan committee, which was the latest one, it submitted its report in 2014. So Planning Commission expert group, the first 1962, for the first time, the Commission for Estimation of Poverty was established under the Planning Commission. ठीक है? In 1962. They set ₹25 per capita per year, not per month, not per day. it was for per year in urban areas and rupees 20 per capita per year for rural people. ठीक है, you can observe how far we have come. Now after that, B.M. Dandekar and N. Rath in 1971 made the very first systematic assessment of poverty using NSS data. ठीक है, they used NSS data for the first time to make a systematic analysis of poverty in India. And unlike the previous assessments where the poverty line was based on the basic subsistence, in the previous assessments it was based कि आप जो fundamental expenditure है वो कर पा रहे हैं कि नहीं, मतलब you are whether you are able to sustain yourself or not, that was called poor. ठीक है, so now this was not based on that subsistence needs, it was rather based on the calorie needs of people, and a standard 2250 calories या 2.25 kilocalories per day in rural areas and urban areas was fixed. ठीक है, फिर अलाग कमिटी YS अलाग in 1979, तो यहाँ पे कैलोरीज नीड था, यहाँ पे न्यूट्रिशनल नीड्स आ गया कैलोरीज के अलावा भी. ठीक है, फॉर सब्सिक्वेंट ईयर्स एडजस्टमेंट फॉर इन्फ्लेशन फॉर सब्सिक्वेंट ईयर्स इन 1979, फिर 1980 के लिए अगर पॉवर्टी एस्टिमेशन करना हो तो यू विल हैव टू एडजस्ट फॉर इन्फ्लेशन. दिस इज व्हाट अलाग कमिटी रिकमेंडेड. फिर लाकड़ा वाला कमिटी 1993, तो यहाँ पे न्यूट्रिशनल नीड्स की बात हुई कि भाई कैलोरी ही नहीं, प्रोटीन और ये सब भी देखना. फिर लाकड़ा वाला कमिटी ने कहा नहीं, वी शुड गो फॉर अ बास्केट ऑफ गुड्स विच पीपल यूज फ्रीक्वेंटली. ठीक है, एंड उसके बेसिस पे कंज्यूमर प्राइस इंडेक्स इंडस्ट्रियल वर्कर एंड कंज्यूमर प्राइस इंडेक्स एग्रीकल्चर लेबर, मतलब दोनों काइंड ऑफ पीपल के लिए एस्टिमेट किया गया कि व्हाट काइंड ऑफ गुड्स दे यूज वेरी फ्रीक्वेंटली, है ना. इट इंक्लूडेड इंटॉक्सिकेंट्स आल्सो, टोबैको आल्सो. ठीक है, कंजप्शन एक्सपेंडिचर शुड बी बेस्ड ऑन कैलोरी कंजप्शन. ठीक है, तो कंजप्शन एक्सपेंडिचर तो ये है, बट द पॉवर्टी लाइन शुड बी बेस्ड ऑन व्हाट अ बास्केट ऑफ गुड्स, एंड उस बास्केट ऑफ गुड्स के जो like a basket of goods is formed, एक specific basket की मतलब tobacco, clothing and all these, and then it is estimated कि इन सारी चीजों को अचीव करने के लिए minimum amount of money एक क्या हो सकता है poverty estimation उसके हिसाब से. And then very important तेंदुलकर कमेटी. ठीक है, सुरेश तेंदुलकर कमेटी. It was again formulated under the planning commission itself in 2009, took under the consideration changing the consumption patterns. ठीक है, now 1993 से 2009 के बीच में prosperity prevailed in India for a good period of time, and then they undertook a review of this whole poverty thing because the consumption patterns in India had changed. ठीक है, the basket of goods that the 1993 committee formed, that basket of goods was no more the very same basket of goods that the people in 2009 were using, right? So they took for the changing consumption pattern, shifted from calorie consumption. Now calorie consumption was not important. ठीक है, calorie consumption, see, calorie consumption can happen at the same time hunger can prevail, that is called hidden hunger. But since the consumption pattern of people has changed because of the increased income, ठीक है, so specific items like cereal, vegetable, fruits, sugar, fuel, intoxicants, education, medical, entertainment and many more, these goods were considered for estimation of poverty line. Unlike Alak committee which had separate PLBs, ठीक है, poverty line baskets, basket of goods, ठीक है, कि what kind of goods are people using. तो अलग कमेटी में एग्रीकल्चर लेबर के लिए अलग था, इंडस्ट्रियल वर्कर के लिए अलग था, फिर रूरल कैटेगरी के लिए अलग था, अर्बन कैटेगरी के लिए अलग था. तो तेंदुलकर कमेटी रेकमेंडेड कि सिंगल बास्केट ऑफ गुड्स शुड बी यूज्ड. ठीक है, एंड उसके बेसिस पे ₹446 पर कैपिटा पर मंथ फॉर रूरल पॉवर्टी लाइन एस्टैब्लिश की गई एंड ₹587.80 पर कैपिटा पर मंथ फॉर अर्बन एरियाज पॉवर्टी लाइन एस्टिमेट की गई. ठीक है, फिर प्राइस एडजस्टमेंट प्रोसेस कि एक बार आपने एडजस्ट तो कर दिया, फिर प्राइस एडजस्टमेंट विल बी डन इन टेकिंग व्यू द इन्फ्लेशन एंड नॉट ओनली इन्फ्लेशन, ऑल्सो सब्सिक्वेंट ईयर्स फॉर 2009 के बाद जो ईयर्स आएंगे वहां पे पॉवर्टी लाइन की जो एस्टिमेशन है. ठीक है, पॉवर्टी लाइन मतलब एक उस लाइन के ऊपर नॉन पुअर, उस लाइन के नीचे पुअर, तो उस लाइन का जो एस्टिमेशन है दैट शुड टेक इन कंसिडरेशन द चेंजिंग पैटर्न्स ऑफ एक्सपेंडिचर, राइट. क्योंकि उसके बाद like expenditure on mobile has become very important, like data consumption, है ना, so that might come into the basket, right. So this was all about Tendulkar committee. Then in 2014, in 2011 basically Rangarajan committee was formed again to to make an analysis of whole poverty estimate, and 2014 में इन्होंने report submit की, and it said that based on independent CMIE survey, the poverty line should be based on independent CMIE. CMIE is again Center for Monitoring of Indian Economy. It's a private organization based in Bombay. तो इनके जो सर्वे हैं उनके बेसिस पे होनी चाहिए, ना कि NSS के सर्वे पे. This is what Rangarajan committee said. Okay. फिर normative and behavioral levels. Poverty का एक लाइन नहीं होना चाहिए, ठीक है. It should actually be a sum or aggregate of normative and behavioral levels. Normative levels will be based on ideal and desirable nutrition. Nutrition यानी food based, and the other will be non-food based expenses, right? मतलब they wanted to classify, they wanted to make the poverty line more holistic by addressing the different kind of expenditure that people were doing, right? Food based needs calories 2090 kilocalorie in urban areas and 2155 kilocalories in rural areas, right? फिर protein and fat तीनों की requirement इन्होंने स्पेसिफाई की, एंड देन एक्सपेंडिचर भी स्पेसिफाई किया कि रूरल एरियाज में 32 पर डे पर कैपिटा एंड अर्बन एरियाज में 47 पर कैपिटा पर डे. So these were the recommendation of Rangarajan committee. What is important is that you should know the difference between all these committees and the recommendations they made, right? And how they differed. This is very important topic. This question has been asked many times in prelims as well as mains. Okay, so I hope you understood this. That is all for the day. If you have any comments, any feedback, any questions, you can reach out to me in the comment sections. I'll be more than happy to take them.